whether it's turf or grass. I know there's like this contentious debate about which one's better and like grass is better. But, like grass is not as innocent as people think it is. By the way, there's a lot of injuries happening. Like the Super Bowl, that injury happened in the Super Bowl. That guy walked in the field and tore his Achilles. That was on grass.
Welcome back to another episode of George on Sports with me, your host, George. I'm back from Vegas, back from the Super Bowl. We're back doing some podcasts, and I'm really excited to have Jack from Caddx Cleats on the show. Jack, thank you for joining me, and how are you, bro?
Happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me. I'm good. Excited about this. It's been a long time coming. I'm trying to get this thing done for a few weeks.
It has. For those who don't know, I mean, this was supposed to happen prior to the Super Bowl. And to be fair, the story's quite interesting because I came across a reel that was put out on the Caddx Cleats Instagram page, and it blown up. I'm talking between 3 and 4 million views. And I'd seen this reel. And as someone who used to play the sport, I had an immediate interest because it was about cleats. Watch the reel, and I'm looking at the information, the videos, and then I'm seeing that these cleats have the ability to reduce injury, in particular, ACL injuries, knee injuries, ankle injuries. So it's got my attention. I'm locked in. I'm zoned in. And then I come across the idea that these cleats, they have movable studs, which I had a kind of light bulb went off in my mind, thinking, hold on a second. As someone who's into sport in the NFL, we kind of know that, studs getting caught in the grass, so on and so forth, are one of the main reasons for these injuries. Why have no one done this yet? And I was so shocked that, I hadn't seen it. But lo and behold, you guys at Caddx Cleats had done exactly that. And I was actually over the moon. I was like, you know what? I've got to get these guys on the show. We've got to chop up. We've got to talk about what's going on here. So I'm glad to finally get things going with Jack here. And we're going to kick it off. We're going to talk about you, Jack. Before we talk about the cleats, technology, what you guys are doing for the game, which is huge. What's your experience with sport or injury prevention, either one of the two?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'll start with sport because my sport kind of leads me into this injury reducing journey I've been on. So I played high school basketball. That's it. I played junior college basketball. I got injured pretty badly in my chest, so I had to quit basketball. So I actually ended up watching YouTube videos on how to punt a football, and I got a scholarship. That's how I got school paid for. I was decent at it, but kind of throughout this journey, my dad and I were talking, and we were both watching the game, and somebody went down with a non-contact injury, and we both thought that looked super preventable. I mean, just something has to give. You know what I mean? It won't be the turf, and like the component that does give is the athlete, and that's just wrong. But no one ever points to the cleats, so we figured if the cleats could just give a little bit rotationally, that could alleviate the majority of the injury. So I did my homework for a year. I taught myself biomechanics and physics and all the stuff that I had no business learning about as a college dropout. But ended up kind of figuring out how to make these things flex internally. And then we hooked up with this team in Oregon called iGenerator, and they're kind of like, I mean, they're the shoe gurus, man. Like when companies have trouble with shoes, they call these guys. So made it practical from a manufacturing standpoint, and just kind of just took off from there. And we've been testing this thing for years. Like this has been a long journey. Like it wasn't until recent that we were Caddx. We were a different company name, but now we're like transitioning into like a different look, different name. And now we're going public and trying to get, a sales-based company. So that was never the plan. It was always to have intellectual property and kind of sell it to one of these bigger companies. But, they all wanted to see more data. So, here we are. Long story short, here we are. But it's happy to be here, happy for the journey, ups and downs and everything. Very lucky.
It's those ups and downs that make the journey, right? And when you get to that light at the end of the tunnel, you can look back and say, you've been through the trials and tribulations. This is a topic that I can't wait to talk about, just because I mentioned earlier, I played the sport for 11 years. I'm actually very fortunate enough to never have had any ACL injuries, no tears, no breaks. Now, granted, I have tons of wear and tear. I'm actually scheduled to have surgery in about 3 weeks' time on my shoulders. I played running back, so tells you what you need to know.
For sure. Yeah.
But the fact that I came across that reel, and by the way, that reel, it went off. The comments, the views, you're onto something there, because we all love sport. We all see what's happening in men and women's sport right now, in terms of the ankle injuries and knee injuries. You talk about field surfaces, one of the hottest topics in the NFL right now. And then you look at the cleats, which is essentially where this is all coming from. So we've spoken about a bit of your background and obviously how you've got into what you're doing now with Caddix. But non-contact injuries, I mean, you will have tons of research and data, and I see you guys are showing a lot of the information on Caddix Instagram too. They are on the rise at a rapid rate. In particular, female sports. So football, for example, or soccer, if you like. Now, I'm no expert. From what I've had a look at online, it seems to be that mechanically, in terms of the way females are built and the way their joints are structured, there seems to be, a bit more stress on the knee and ankle joints. Which, when you combine that with, cleats that are traditionally made for men, I want to say, in terms of how they don't move, they're very rigid, and I think there's a lot of focus on traction and grip, which is great. But the other side of that is, if there's nowhere for that traction or grip to go, I'm assuming the force comes upwards, and that kind of happens where people tear their ACLs and things like that. So, just talk a bit about the rise of non-contact injuries in the NFL and women's sport, and just what we can do. Obviously, Caddix is one of the ways we can solve that, but it's a crazy rise and it's very rapid.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's been exceedingly going in the wrong direction for a very long time. I mean, I think part of it is the way we train as athletes. I think we're training at a rate our bodies could not keep up with. Given the rigid nature of cleats and the unforgiving nature of playing surfaces, whether it's turf or grass. I know there's like this contentious debate about which one's better, and like grass is better. But, like, grass is not as innocent as people think it is. By the way, there's a lot of injuries happening. Like the Super Bowl, that injury happened in the Super Bowl. That guy walking the field and tore his Achilles. And that was on grass. So it's at some point we gotta stop looking at the surfaces being the majority of the problem. It's a problem, but I think overall the biggest culprit is the cleats. So with these traction based plates and studs, and you'll jump higher, run faster, which is great. That's how we perform as athletes, but that comes at a serious cost. It's and a detriment to the overall career of an athlete. And women in particular are biologically at greater risk because of reproductive things. Like the angle of their hips and knees just isn't what men are because of the biological thing. So like they're at such a disadvantage, but no one's changing anything for women. They're just saying, hey, we got cleats that are men's cleats, and then we'll paint them pink so you'll look good in it. But like that's it. You know what I mean? Like no one's allowing anything to give. No one's trying to help. They're just trying to go about things like nothing's wrong, but there is something wrong. So, I mean, there were 71 ACL tears in 2021 in the NFL, just the NFL. Yeah. And then 23 women missed the World Cup last year from ACL tears. 23.
Crazy.
So it's a problem that's been around for decades, man. It's just no one. Yeah, I think the big thing that happened was Aaron Rodgers said something about the turf. When he tore the Achilles, and that kind of sparked this huge debate, but it's not just the turf. Like the turf, I will say turf does suck, but like it's what we put on our feet to play on the turf. Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of components, man, a lot of different things.
It's interesting because I think on the Caddx Instagram there was somebody who shared in a story about you could make a team. I think it was a women's team full of everyone who's injured with an ACL injury right now, and it was literally a full squad, if not more, and substitutes on the bench. So you're right. I mean, we're literally seeing it's not literally one a day, but it feels like it's one a day at this rate. I'm getting news pop up every single day. This person tore their ACL. This person tore their ACL, and you're right. The one thing I did see was maybe it was last year. There was I think Nike had released a pair of cleats. They weren't movable. They were just designed
Phantom Lunas.
Yeah, the circular kind of.
Yeah, it was a circle thing in the forefront. Yeah, and honestly, good for Nike for trying. Honestly, absolutely. Like, I know one person who's worn those cleats, and she actually tore meniscus in them.
Ouch.
And there was no one wearing them in the World Cup last year. So I don't know if that's indicative of how the cleats are made. I've never seen them. I never put them on, but I've heard one person wear them and one person hated them. So I don't know. Yeah. But good for them for trying.
So you mentioned obviously Nike tried to do that and obviously never went down that path, but you guys have gone down the path of movable. I think to move inwards cleats that allow the movement, give a bit more movement, which I guess affects the force upwards in the ankle and the knee. You mentioned having to teach yourself biomechanics. What was that like? Because I'm thinking to myself, if you're going to make a pair of cleats, just like you said, you're going to have to get into the science. So what's that process like?
Yeah, that was a tough process. I was 19 years old, not in college. I was just studying biomechanics like 12 hours a day with physics, and I had no base level of knowledge, like nothing. So I actually bought a book, Biomechanics for Dummies, from Barnes and Noble. Like I read that. I read that before. I read any articles online, but it's kind of like this. There's something called there's a shoe surface interface, the relationship your foot has with the ground and playing surface and
Okay.
cleat and whatever you're wearing on your foot. And that within that interface is what's called rotational stiffness. So when you watch someone tear their ACL, the first thing you do is, oh, they got stuck in the ground. Obviously, the word stuck is like a very common phrase in that predicament. So what we were trying to accomplish and figure out is that what allows that freedom from rotational stiffness? Like, is it a negative stress thing? Is it rotational freedom? Like, how do you do that? So we partnered with the University out west, and we did this finite element modeling of our concept, our functionality of our cleat, and we applied it towards a piece of material. And that material, it gave so there was no rotational force. But then
Right.
after the force was released, it went right back to its original formation. So it's elastic in properties, which is really good because you don't want. So, for example, there was a cleat years and years and years ago, and the shoe sole at a certain amount of force broke off from the shoe.
Hmm.
So it negated that force, but it didn't do it in a practical way
Got it.
because now you're sitting on the field and you have no shoe. So we were trying to kind of take a concept similar to that, but also allow it to be playable through the whole game. So we take this strain over stress ratio and we apply it to this elastic property of this material, and we try to just mitigate that force as much as possible, and that's what we ended up with. So um, yeah, it was tough, and then we tested it at a biomechanics lab in Virginia,
Hmm.
and I work with a lot of professional sports teams. And there's this machine called the Beast, um, and it kind of just like attaches to the cleat and just rips it as hard as it can and like twists it, and essentially tries to break the cleat. I think it's 1,200 pounds of force,
Cool.
and then it has all this data afterwards about the rotational scores and was it
Hmm.
traction and did it slip? Did it alleviate tension and force? And ours actually did. So we have
Hmm.
all this data that frankly nobody can read who isn't in that field. But we have the data, we have the numbers. So it was a tough journey, but I mean, yeah, I'm so fortunate to be able to like have that knowledge
Yeah.
and those type of studies. So yeah, it's been
Yeah.
it's been invaluable for us in our journey.
Absolutely, and I mean, I'll say it. I think it's going to be invaluable for anyone who's on the field who's
Yeah.
going to use these cleats. And talking about being on the field, you've had a couple of. I think you had a guy from the Raiders who was wearing these cleats. I think he's in the promo video. You had a guy from
hmm
college football as well who's used cleats, and I'm sure you've had others who have used the cleats, and I'm sure have had good things to say about it.
Yeah, yeah. I just did a video shoot 2 nights ago with the University of Georgia football player,
Mm,
and he was like, "These are more comfortable than my running shoes." Like I mean, that little movement, you can't really feel it. I mean, you can't feel it at all. We're
hmm.
so far removed. We're so tall and far removed from that little flex at the bottom of our feet, so you can't
Hmm.
feel it. But I mean, when we posted that video, we had probably 10 or 12 starting NFL players reach out and be like, "Hey, this makes
Wow.
sense. I want in. How can I help? When can I get a pair?" So if
Yeah.
you if you if you've been around sports, you've been around injury, how much of a no-brainer it is. Like you, I mean, you're the first
Mm-hmm.
person, the guy hit us up on podcast, like, "Hey, this makes sense. Let's talk." So yeah.
Yeah, man. I was literally, I couldn't believe it. And watching it, I was like, this is legit. Why has no one taken the time? And I guess the answer to that is, twofold. You got the big corporations, and obviously they got to make money, right? They got to sell their cleats. They've got to get the name about it being fast and give you the traction and the grip and jump higher, like you said, run faster. And I get that side of things,
Mm,
and it's got to look a certain way too. But when we're talking about elite level of playing, be it women's football, be it the NFL, we're talking about health and safety. We're talking about longevity. Um, there's a reason why playing surfaces, like you said, are one of the hot topics right now in terms of turf or hybrid. There's also a reason why we're talking about injuries so much right now because it's what's happening and the rate is just going one way and that's up and it's the wrong way. Um,
mm.
so yeah, by all means, as soon as I saw your stuff, I had to. There was no way I was going to let it go. I was so excited. I was in the DMs immediately. Um,
Yeah.
but patents, because I think there's 7 or 8 patents with the shoe. Is that right?
Yeah, we have it'll probably be closer to 12 after they're all said and done. But yeah, we
Okay.
just we just filed our seventh one. So our patent attorney's pretty solid. He was a former head legal counsel of Adidas, so he kind of knows what he's doing.
Wow.
So yeah, we're just kind of waiting on that. It's just a long process, but we've had the
Big
filing dates
game.
and everything, and yeah, so it's good, man. We're feeling pretty
Yeah.
good about it. So we're just trying to protect all the angles we can.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen you've got the low cut version, then you've got the soccer version as well. I think I think you've got the higher ankle version too. But more importantly, you have a female version too, right?
Yep.
Now, what is the main difference between that version, bearing in mind, females are the ones who seem to be suffering the most of these ACL injuries compared to the standard men's cleat?
Yeah. So the studs are very similar.
Okay.
I will say that, but the overall structure and like engineering behind the plate and the mold and like that's all different. So, but if you consider stud orientation and placement, and you don't allow those studs to move like ours, it doesn't matter where the studs are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you have women's studs or men's studs. If they're not moving, they're not going to prevent or reduce anything. They're not. So we made our plate in our shoe a little wider than traditional. It's not exactly wide, but it's not as narrow as a traditional cleat. So it's a little wider, which helps both genders, honestly. And we made a little more arch support in the women's one. So yeah, it's more structurally sound up top as well. So it's kind of just like it kind of hugs your foot like it's supposed to. But yeah, we have the sock one with the small sock. We have the men's low and the men's mid with the taller sock.
That's the one, yeah. I mean, thinking about I stopped playing a couple of years ago, but if that was me, I'd be in the I like a bit more protection around the ankle, so the mid sock would be me. And in my mind, I'm just thinking about it now. I'm rolling back the years, thinking, damn, I could have done with something like that right now. But it's exciting, it's refreshing, it's great to see. The interest is 100% there, clearly, not just for me, but from those who actually act in the sport right now, both men and women. I see there's pre-orders available right now. Is that still the case?
Yeah, still the case. Yep. Not probably not for much longer, but yeah, it's still open. So,
guys, it's Jack here from Caddix himself. They are flying off the shelf at Hotcakes, and for good reason, because we see so many things coming into the league with regards to sports, but this is one of the things that is actually going to help the sport in terms of helping the people who are on the ground playing the sport, which in long term they're going to be better for the sport, for men, for women moving forward. No, it's been a pleasure. I mean, I'm keen to know. You've obviously got the cleats. You're still going through the process and getting the patterns down and everything else. There's got to be a part of your mind that's thinking, what else can we do? Is there anything in the pipeline that maybe is an exclusive, or maybe you can't say that you're possibly thinking about doing moving forward?
Man, that's a long list. I'll tell you that, man. That's a long list. That's my mind's one of those minds that never stops, and our whole team. I mean, we're always thinking of ways to push this thing and pivot and go in a direction nobody has before. So that's a long list, and I'll say this as like a very, very early sneak previews. Like, we're not just gonna make cleats. We're gonna get this across the board. We're trying to get this across the board to all sports. So down the line, down the pipeline, absolutely. But right now we got to focus on this and make sure the demand is there and people see this for what it is. Not. I mean, people call this a scam, and like, we're not trying to scam anybody. Like, this is backed by science. Like, this isn't just a money thing. Like, hey, buy cleats.
Yeah, when you're doing something right and you guys have invested, I'm sure, so much and sacrifice and the sleepless nights to only do something good for the game, that kind of side comes naturally because people can never really jump on board. But I think what you'll start to see is the interest is only going to go up and up, because what you guys are doing is phenomenal, and I can't wait to see. I'm going to be following the progress all the way from when I first came across the Instagram to forever moving forward. So I wish you guys all the best. It's been great to have you on the show, Jack. I really wanted to do this, and I'm glad we got to do this. Thank you for coming on, man. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Glad we got to finally do it. And I'll make sure I'll send you a pair when they're available, for sure.
100. Trust me, I'll be using them on the field.
I know you will.
I'll be using them on the field. I guarantee you that. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed that one. It's a great show. I mean, especially if you're into the sport or any sport that involves, obviously, field in particular. Jack here from Caddx Cleats. Go check him out if you want to get some available pre-order right now, but not for long. Stay tuned, man. They've got some good things coming up, and I think they're going to make some noise in the game. But until then, I've been George from George on Sports, here with Jack from Caddx, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Appreciate it, brother. Thanks, man.